Hello, I'd like to talk to you about the shocking truth about UK housing, or should we put it, 6 ways that the UK housing industry is effectively defrauding its clients, and I'll give you a solution about how to stop it. But first of all, I'd like to ask you a few questions. If you were spending hundreds of thousands of pounds on a new home, would you expect it to look good, have enough space, be healthy as a place to live, provide enough fresh air, provide comfort, health, well-being, not being too noisy? Would it provide you with low energy bills, and would it overheat infrequently? And just think about this for a minute. If you were building your own home, which of these would you live without? Any of them? Could you actually sacrifice any of these? Well, I'm going to tell you about the UK construction industry and where things stand right now. And I'm going to be focusing on the northeast of England in particular. There was a study done in 2005 by the Centre for Architecture and the Built Environment looking at housing quality. And in this case, there are 3 regions that were examined. We've got Yorkshire and Humber, the northeast, and the northwest in the middle. Now, in the northeast, which I'm going to focus on, you can see that 63% of the construction is average, and a whopping great 31% is considered to have poor design quality to it. Compare this to other regions where the average quality in Yorkshire and Humber is 86%, and they've only got 14% of poor quality. And whereas the northwest has got 24. So the northeast is actually the worst in performing region in terms of design quality, though it does have a couple of examples of good work and very good work. But the problems with the UK housing industry are a lot more substantial than simply down to the design, the quality of the design. What we find is that UK homes are now the smallest in Europe. And the reason for that is because of the way that speculative house building projects have been developed over time. So you're not going to get the space that you really require. So the average dwelling size across Europe is around about 100 square metres, and in the UK we're talking of around about 75 square metres. So it's really quite impoverished. We've effectively lost a very good room or a couple of rooms from a UK home these days. And then if we start to think about the health that we'd and well-being that we'd expect from a home, the University of Exeter, their medical school, have written a research paper. They've looked at 700 new properties and found that whilst the UK's got one of the highest asthma rates in the world, the new homes themselves, if poorly ventilated, and are also likely to increase people's exposure to other biological, chemical and physical contaminants. So we haven't got healthy homes that are getting constructed, and so it raises a lot of questions about what we need to do in that kind of context. To make things a little bit more clear, there was a study done by the Technology Strategy Board that examined different ventilation strategies throughout the UK that are all supported by building regulations. Now, behind the grey, what you can see some blue and red lines. Now, what we do in modern homes often is install trickle vents. So these are the little vents above windows, still within the frame. They're there to provide the fresh air. Now, what happens is people go and close those vents because they start to feel cold drafts. So it's understandable behavioural stuff, but what the result of that, according to the research by Sterling Howison, is that an airtight home with trickle vents is likely to result in a more toxic and hazardous indoor environment, with a concurrent and significant long-term and insidious impacts upon public health. So in his view, the methodology underpinning the current regulations cannot be considered creditable. So there's some major issues with that ventilation strategy. So what are the alternatives? Well, with the building regulations being as they are, there's also mechanical ventilation options available. Now, what the studies are showing there, BizRIA, as an industry organisation, they studied 40 homes and at random, and they found that 95% of all of the properties that they evaluated actually failed to meet the building regulations. And some buildings for a number of reasons, some homes for a number of reasons. So there's some major issues within the construction industry in that regard. So there's some research that I did with Jack Harvey Clark from Apex Acoustics. We did a literature review of over 1,000 homes that had been covered in various different academic papers, and what we found was that there's a just phenomenal number of homes, mechanically ventilated homes, that have got acoustic problems, noise from the fans. They don't have attenuators, which are a bit like a car exhaust, which help keep the sound, the breakout noise down, and also crosstalk attenuation, so that reduces the amount of breakout sound between rooms. And so that's a major issue. And then we also found that the UK building regulations permit 30 dBA as a noise level. Now, what we're finding is that that is not adequate. The research that we did, we identified some research that's showing that really this will result in around about 30% of people being dissatisfied. So that means more or less 1 in 3 people will be complaining about the noise. And when people complain about the noise, they do one of 2 things. They either switch the ventilation system off, or they switch the ventilation system down. And therefore, bang goes your indoor air quality. And if you lose your indoor air quality, then this can mean that you can start to again have greater incidence of asthma, poor health, and the likes can start to ensue from that. So it can be hugely problematic. And then if we start to look at some studies that have been done by Leeds Metropolitan University over the last 20 years or so, I should say that Leeds Met are now known as Leeds Beckett University. What you can see here is that the predicted performance in blue, so this is the theoretical performance, this is the one that building regulations says you should achieve. If you've got the blue line, then you've at different points in time satisfied the building regs or the design standards that you are seeking to achieve. And then there's the measured performance, and you can see in all cases, in fact, that there is a difference between the theoretical and the measured performance. In some cases, ranging from 30 to 70%. But only on the right-hand side will you notice that there are 2 properties they're consuming, designed to use very little energy, and there's actually a very small gap between the 2. Those are properties that were designed in Horton-le-Spring, and they were projects that I was involved with. Now, the reason that that difference is there is because we're actually within the measurement error of the co-heating tests. So they are some of the most successful projects, low energy projects in the UK. So who am I? Who is Mark Siddall? Well, after having left school at 16, I trained to become an architectural technologist, and then I moved up to Newcastle from Ormskirk in Lancashire, and I went on and trained to become an architect. And then I've worked in a number of different architectural practices in the northeast and produced a number of different projects, all of which have been quite technical of their kind of type. So I've been involved with Grade 2 listed buildings, with schools, with laboratory buildings and the likes. And then in 2006 I started to get involved with low energy design, and because I became more aware of the failures of the UK construction industry. And since then I've been involved with some of the lowest energy refurbishment and low energy new builds. I've been involved with writing a number of papers and articles, and I've contributed to books because of the kind of work that I've been involved with. I also deliver training to fellow professionals as well as to students at universities. I'm a member of the RIBA, the ARB, and the Constructing Excellence. I'm a technical advisor to the Passive House Trust and a trustee to the AECB, which is the Association for Environment Conscious Building. Now, so the kinds of projects that I'm working on are not so much the simple ones. We're talking about more complex projects, which are highlighted here in the darker blue. You can come back to this as time goes on. Just pause the video. But basically, looking at more complex projects that are more demanding, for whether it's because they are technically demanding or whether it's because the clients don't want to get as deeply embroiled in the actual construction processes themselves. That's where I'm ideally working, though of course I can provide architectural support to all projects that are where there's less design input required. Now, this is a photograph of of the Racecourse estate. There's in 25 homes actually in total. These are some of the lowest energy homes in the UK. Now I'm just bringing these up because what we did is we actually went back and we spoke to the people living in the properties, and we found out what they thought about living in those properties. We used a standardised survey that allows us to compare Racecourse to other projects. And what you see here in this graph is you've got the little grey circles with the white hollow core inside. They're other residential projects, of similar size to Racecourse that have been kept within the database. And that really dark black dot up on the right hand side, heading towards the upper right hand corner, that's Racecourse. So we can see how it's comparing with regard to comfort and the levels of satisfaction that people are experiencing with that, with regard to thermal comfort, noise and the likes. And then we've also got the satisfaction index. So this is also thinking about aesthetics and space and the location of the properties with regard to getting to amenities and things like that. And again, you can see that the response, the satisfaction of everybody is just phenomenal. Racecourse just completely conquers everything else that's out there. But it's not just that, it's that the ventilation has also been studied very closely. Leeds Metropolitan University measured the airflows and found that they were the first houses that they'd ever found that actually performed as predicted once again. So it's not just for energy, it's for ventilation. And there are other studies that have been produced more recently by the Technology Strategy Board, which is showing that the Code for Sustainable Homes and Building Regulations study buildings are not performing as you'd expect. Around about 81% of them are actually failing to perform in accordance with the building regulations. Meanwhile, these ultra low energy projects, the passive house projects that I do and other people are now doing in the UK, about 95% of those are performing as you predict, or pretty much as you predict. So you can have a lot more confidence with that kind of design standard, because it is the world's leading design standard. Now, Jack Harvey-Clark, who I'd written that research paper with, he went back to Racecourse and undertook some measurements in 3 properties. And what we found was that the noise levels in there were actually very good indeed. There was a very high level of satisfaction. There were no complaints from the occupants, and the loudest things in the rooms actually were the ticking of the clocks. So really, we know that the design was done correctly, and we're very pleased with the performance there. So in fact, we've got some feedback from residents. This is one anonymised resident. The bungalows helped enormously health-wise. The clean, constant, fresh air has helped with my breathing as I suffer from heart problems and asthma. Also, getting around the bungalow is a great help to my mobility, back problems, knee and hip problems. So some really positive responses there from a person that's really been in a very challenging situation before that. And some feedback from Alan Thompson from Gen 2 Construction. Alan was very kind enough to say that my technical knowledge and of low carbon design and building performance is breathtaking. And importantly for him, I was also had an eye on what it would take to construct the buildings in an appropriate way, because they're quite groundbreaking at the time. They were the largest passive house development in 2011. So he's got no hesitation in recommending me, which is really, really kind of him. Very nice testimonial there. And then was Wolfgang Feist, who was the inventor of the passive house standard, which, as I say, is the world's leading energy performance standard. He says Mark is one of the pioneers that introduced passive house to the UK. His experience and ongoing research into building performance makes him one of the UK's most skilled and knowledgeable passive house architects. I've no doubt that Mark Siddall's buildings also offer an economical and attractive solution to investors. So some really, really fantastic kind of feedback there. And then finally from David Johnson from Leeds Beckett University, or what was Leeds Met. The Racecourse development is one of the very few developments where it's been shown that it's possible to bridge the gap between the predicted and measured performance. It's been a joy to work with someone who's committed and knowledgeable. So some really kind of very, very kind words from some very, very well-respected people there. And it's with that kind of all those kind of experiences and all that knowledge that I went forward and set up my own practice. And this was the first project that I worked on. This is for Trevor and Judith Gospel. This is Steel Farm, and perhaps I'll do another more video on this at some point. But basically the feedback from Judith was before it was hard work having the family come and stay. In the summer everything was okay, but a bit depressing in the winter. I had to shut part of the house because it was so cold. Now everything's much easier and much more cheery. I enjoy using the whole house. So you can't really get better than that. It's transformed the quality of people's lives. Never mind the fact that their energy bills are absolutely minuscule. They, these 45 kilogram cylinders that you might use to heat a caravan perhaps? Well, they only use 6 of those to heat their house for a whole year. So we've got minimum amount of energy being used there. And then we've got some feedback from Joe Dixon about the information that was given to him and his lads. So the drawings covered every foreseen detail and problem which could occur in the building process. The exceptional standard of construction documents definitely saved the client money. We could not have built the project with the standard batch of architect's drawings and specification. So again, some real positive feedback there. Really kind of a testimonial to the fact that Joe had all of the information that he needed, and in fact I even provided a day's worth of training for him and his lads so that they could really get their head around what they needed to do and ensure that they could build. So if you know anybody that's actually that you think is suitable, that would benefit from buildings that actually perform as predicted, that are reliable and trustworthy, then I would ask you to send me some information about any self-build plots that you know in the northeast. I'd be able to help people out and help people build their own homes, and I could even help the estate agents that are helping to sell the land. I can even help them sell the land because I've got some tools and techniques for that. Now, if you're actually a self-builder and you're watching this and you want to discover how to build a passive house, then just go to the website passivehousesecrets.com and you'll be able to learn a lot more about Passive House there. And if you want to learn a little bit more about me, then please head over to marksiddall.com. And if you'd like to go and find out more about my architectural practice, then please just go to lowenergyarchitecture.co.uk, or you could just email me. That's mark@leap4.it. Okay, well, I look forward to hearing from you, or please enjoy using the resources that I've got available on my website. Thank you very much.